JB, welcome back to APOS, and it's good to see you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh.
It's great to see everybody also back in the same place.
Today, you've launched Max now in the US. Let's start by looking at the streaming market more generally, particularly in the US and I guess internationally. What's your view on profitability and growth in this space and where your company sits?
Well, I think the macro statement is that we went through a period of a decade of great oversupply at great underpricing, and we are in a period of rationalization, and the great reaggregation is well underway. And the reaggregation is both structural, obviously companies like ours in terms of Warner Brothers and Warner Media and Discovery coming together, so there's some structural components of consolidation. And then there's reaggregation in the kind of rebundling, both through partnerships, like Kelly mentioned, on platforms like Amazon, as well as reaggregation through bundles, commercial bundles through partners. So that's one piece of it. I think pricing rationalization is starting again, which is ultimately, unfortunately for the last decade, the industry went on a kind of a content oversupply bender, and there's frankly there was too much content, too much investment chasing consumer interest and consumer eyeballs, and we're back to beginning to have a more rational view of that. And then on top of that, as we look at sort of the globalization of it, I think you're working towards a world where, over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to end up with, 3 to 5 big global players, in addition to maybe some local champions in individual markets, but certainly at the global scale, probably a handful of big global players. Engagement and share-wise, we've seen very positive indicators in the first 120 days of greater frequency of people coming to visit, more time spent per user, more diversity of content watched, and the habituality of people coming to the platform, which is really key for the churn reduction, improving, and so that's a good trend. And the scale is obviously the third thing that will come kind of next, and that's both obviously in the US as well as we have obviously not even started our rollout in the international markets. We'll start in Latin America in the first quarter. We'll do Europe before the Olympics, which we have to get done because we have the Olympics coming in Paris next summer. And then we will get to Asia, and I know this has sort of been Asia continues to be critically important, but we have to do it in that sequence.
Sure.
And we'll get to Asia before the end of next year with our existing markets, and then roll out to new markets again starting in 2025. If you go back to what defines our success, we're not trying to just chase being the biggest from a scale perspective. And so if there are markets where we feel like it is uneconomical for us to enter, India is a fantastic market. We've been in that market for a long time. We looked at the market and for two factors. Number one is, as I say, there's just some technical realities of our product roadmap that allow us to not launch. We can't launch in every market all at once quite yet as we re-platform this entire offering. So there's some bandwidth practical requirements we have to measure, which is why the sequencing of rollouts across the world, number one. Number two is as we look at the markets, if part of our measure of success is profitability, we have to have conviction that the ARPUs in a market, the content costs in a market, and our differentiation is viable enough to make a go of it and to have a profitable business over a 3 to 5 year time horizon. If the answer is no, because the market ARPUs are just too low, or it's way overserved by a ton of other players in the market who are, spending a ton on content and losing a ton of money, we may say it's just not the right time. So we love the Indian market. We have obviously a great partnership with Uday and the team, and have enormous amount of respect for them in that market. But every market we'll look at differently, and we'll make that assessment as to, do we think we can be successful based on those 3 metrics of definitions of success that we have? Yes, then great, we'll go and we'll figure out how best to attack it. And if the answer is, we don't see a path, then we'll find other partnerships and other ways to go to market and monetize our content appropriately.
A couple of closing ones on that before we close this out a little bit more is on Australia, is that something that's going to be a near-term consideration? And also on Max, launching in Southeast Asia, what are the plans for content, brand, and localization? Will that evolve part of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, we love the Australian market. It's obviously an incredibly important market, both on the distribution side as well as the content origination side. And we have had a long partnership with Foxtel, and Patrick and the team have been terrific. And that's a market that we continue to view as very important for us, where our content in particular does extremely well. The reality, as I said earlier, we're going to be focused on first replatforming in our existing Southeast Asian markets from HBO Go to Max in 24, and we'll probably look to launch in a market like Australia after that.
Got it.
And so that's one, but Australia is a critically important market for us, where again, we think our content is very strong for that market. In terms of local content, look, everything that has been said here, we are huge believers in the power of local content. And that's from a history, that's not just in 2023, a nice thing to say. Yeah. One of the areas we're also very focused on is we have obviously great IP in things like the DC franchises, where historically has been very English language dominant, where we could ultimately bring characters from that universe and originate local IP, potentially with a partner in that market. And so we think it's not just, invest entirely ourselves, but there may be creative ways to partner with existing local players who are great local producers to make something beneficial happen for both of us.
I guess, coming to a close, JB, but I guess the natural question for me to ask you mentioned at the start, you see 3 to 5 global companies in this space over the next 2 to 3 years. If I had to restrict you to 3, who would they be?
I'm not going there, Vivek. Nice try. I love all my kids. They're not my kids, I get it. But
yeah.
Look, I don't want to. Here's what I'd say. I'm not focused on the others.
Yeah.
I'm focused on us.
So will you be one of them?
Yes. Look, we ultimately, in that space, and this is not just, a year's worth of history or a day's worth. If you look at what David Zaslav, our CEO, us as a leadership team have done is continue trying to innovate commercially, but innovate structurally.
Right.
And if you think of where certainly Legacy Discovery started, 15 years ago, and then the roll-up of Scripps, the Warner transaction, part of this is about trying to figure out a way to stay pragmatic, be flexible, be nimble, and try and find a way to be in that kind of last group standing.